to somebody's mashup of Ringo Starr versus Keith Moon while I was riding the bike, you know?
Yeah.
And it just popped on. I thought, okay. But recently, super long story, super short, sort of like that, I reconnected with an old friend of mine that I had gone to junior high school with. And he was...
B-roll, we already have you. You did not change shirts, right?
I did change shirts.
You did change shirts.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like you to just take turns.
Good. So you want me to start? Do B-roll. All right.
yeah,
So
you
I'll do
start
it for
talking.
a couple of minutes, and then
Yeah, about 1 minute.
I'll start.
Yeah.
All right. I'll start. So anyway, so this is what we're doing is that we're getting you. Go ahead and put your glasses on.
Somehow they
So
just
what
got
we're getting you.
oily. Yeah.
And what we're getting you is basically nodding sagely at me like I'm saying interesting things. And so this will allow us to, if we're having an edit, to be able to cover it with you nodding as we're doing. And so that we'll do this for a few seconds, and then we'll switch, and then we'll do that, and then all right. So I think we've got enough about what you're doing now, and so now
I really enjoyed watching you during the previous interview too, because your focus on the phone also really blew me away. You really are an incredible listener. I admire that a lot. Do I need to keep nodding?
Why don't you keep talking?
This thing happened for real yesterday, where Planet Fitness plays the latest pop music.
Yeah.
And occasionally like a classic rock 70s hit. And this old friend of mine had told me to listen to You Better, You Better, You Bet. So Keith Moon and Ringo are competing on my headphones. And that ends, and instantly on the PA in that place comes the Who from the 60s. And I was just, it's like, what in the world is happening? It felt like a Matrix moment, just like this, they don't play this kind of music in here, Yeah. It's like hearing the Beatles in, I don't know, the wrong place, some place that would never play that kind of music. So anyway, synchronicities are, they're endlessly fascinating and impossible to understand,
But I think that's the key to it is understanding.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't know that ant down there has much interest in this conversation.
Right.
It's just not that particularly resonates on the level. So what makes me think that whatever it is that I have as consciousness is the ultimate.
Right.
Heavy metal.
Yeah. That's the
the
ultimate mistake I think we've made.
Yeah. And to be able to think that we have that, because I don't see it. It doesn't appear to me to be
I think you could even, if we knew more about religion and stuff, you could even say how preposterously presumptuous to assume that we could know God. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Right? Because we're just these little creatures. I mean,
how do you
whatever God
comprehend everything? All right, assuming that God equals everything.
Right.
Let's just say everything.
Right.
It's just a basic equation.
Right.
God equals all there is.
Right.
How do you all right, if it's all there is, it has no boundaries. We can't wrap my mind around something that has no boundaries. So how could I possibly make any? I can conceive of just some little piece, little sliver of it, but that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one question before we start.
Please.
Is fidgety crossing your legs and stuff like that bad form? Because
Nope.
you also have incredible poise.
No, it is not bad form at all.
I'm a pretty fidgety
what the best
person.
form is to be, Chris, one of the things that I think is so apropos about us having this conversation right now is that you came out of music. You were one of two people in your graduating who went to UT who got a full ride in music. And then for 10 years, you worked in music, you did it music, and then suddenly the universe goes, well, maybe we have other plans. What happened?
Well, a lot happened. I got to do a lot of things I really wanted to do in terms of kind of success, metrics, I guess, benchmarks.
Yeah.
and I wasn't really having a very good time. I didn't feel great about the music we were making. And I have more of that kind of compulsion of an artist than, I guess, a capitalist.
Right.
And so I was not very happy musically, and I just sort of got unwell, you know. I got to a point where I couldn't really play music without it causing sort of psychosomatic pain.
Yeah.
And I had to stop for a while.
And as a percussionist,
as a drummer, as a really loud drummer. In the 90s, it was a lot of loudness going, a lot of crashing cymbals, and you know.
Yeah.
Nirvana was the dominant influence on music in that decade. So yeah, we played pretty loud.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to make a switch.
So it's time to
went on a journey.
So what happens on this journey?
I went to New York City. I spent about a year in Austin, and spent a lot of time just sort of internally trying to understand what would I do, because I had been a committed musician for, you know, at that point, I was, I don't know, 26, something like that, 27. This
is your identity.
For 15 years leading up to that, you know, starting in 6th grade or something like that. That's all I wanted to do. So, and it had happened, you know, step by step, it had all come together. And I just thought about it, and thought about moving to Santa Fe, thought about moving to, I don't know, Mayberry and, you know, or Kathmandu, you know, somewhere far away. And then realized New York was really kind of the energy and the diversity that I was looking for, and the change, you know. And went up there and piddled in various jobs for a little while, and got to the thing I mentioned to you the other day, where I discovered the green movement.
Yes.
I don't think I told you about how that happened, though. Speaking of synchronicities.
Because this is what year is this? So we can ground this in
2002, 2001, maybe.
So what was the consciousness in climate science, ecology, as far as it was known in what would the newspapers would write about, or what we would know? Because I know that there was. I was aware enough to know that there was some chatter about this, even though it wasn't getting the kind of headlines that we're seeing today.
Yeah. Everything that's happening now was predicted to happen. I mean, I may be exaggerating slightly, but maybe by the end of the century, or 2050 if you were a doomsday, negative case, worst case scenario person. So a lot of where we are today was definitely predicted and understood.
Yeah.
There's also, I should mention, and I didn't know this in 2001.
Yeah.
Because I read, at that time I was reading a lot of the sort of environmentalist literature from the organizations that do great work. Mm-hmm. And the narrative I sort of see there are two worlds. There are environmentalists and conservationists in this world of trying to make, you know, the planet stay livable.
Right.
And the conservationists don't have a voice really at all. They're essentially not heard in the political discussion on the environment, or the social discussion, or the media discussion. That's starting to change, but I actually brought, it's over there, but I brought a study, or the preface to a book that was written in '97 that brings together the best of the conservation biologists to talk about nature's services, which is, in other words, our life support system services. The things that make life possible and keep life going are the wildernesses on the planet that function on their own, that precede us by hundreds of millions of years.
Totally.
And the point of that book from 1997 is to say, we have a few decades left. At the rate we're going, we're going to destroy all of the ecosystems that sustain us before anything else happens. And they're right about that. We're at that 12th hour now. But the narrative in the climate community was, and still largely is, and you know, it's not totally wrong or bad, but it's inaccurate that global warming is going to cause climate change is going to cause extinctions. Extinctions will cause the downfall of the biosphere, and then it will be impossible to buy anything at Amazon.com or breathe, you know?
All right. As long as you put it in that order, okay.
Yeah, right. And that's about the order of it too. But the idea that as the planet warms, the chaos of not having regular seasons anymore will shut down food production, will shut down the ability of ecosystems to sustain themselves year round.
Sure.
So what's being talked about now, just in the last few weeks, because of the fires in the Amazon finally getting coverage, is this, they talk about self-destruction, ecosystem self-destructing, which is really not a great term, but what they mean is that we talked about your body's vital organs.
Sure.
You know, there's a certain size and capacity that has to be present for that thing to continue to live.
Sure.
If you go past that red line, then it can't continue to
No.
produce the services to maintain itself
Yeah, and
that
so
are
then
required.
it shuts down.
And that's what's happening. It's not self-destructing. It's losing the resources it needs to sustain itself. Just like any other living thing, it has a certain amount of resources it needs. So anyway, the discussion in 2002 was if we can get a price on carbon, or if we can get emissions reduction rapidly, voluntarily, if we can get the world to wake up and stop burning gasoline and start burning corn or whatever, we'll be able to turn this around before it gets to be cataclysmic. And we have, 10 to 50 to 100 years to get there. And then if you read into the research, I was like, no, we don't. We don't have any time here. This looks really bad. It looks like we could lose coral reefs. I remember saying in 2007, it looks like we could lose the coral reefs by 2050, but if you really look at the literature, it looks a lot more like 2030. But I was afraid to say that out loud. Now that's common talk, that the Great Barrier Reef could be gone in 10 years, which of course would really devastate ocean life.
Yes.
The ability of the oceans to continue not only to produce our food, but to sort of function as a biospheric organ that keeps the planet in balance and keeps it productive and keeps the climate temperate and all the things we have to have.
So if we think of the planet as an organism, that has lungs and has different ways of renewing itself and rebuilding, and you're getting involved at that level, right?
I'm trying to talk about global ecology, global biosphere, and I'm still struggling to find the language on it, but Biointegrity is the name of this project.
Yes.
Integrity means wholeness.
Yes.
The wholeness of life, that the planet, we've gone over the red line, as I said. We've already taken out, as in destroyed, more than 60% of the wildlife on Earth in the last 50 years. We've already destroyed or paved over at least 50% of the most productive ecosystems on the planet, the ones that give us the most life support services. And that's accelerating and continuing. We're not going backwards on that yet. We need to go the other way. So I lost your question in that, but
so give me some. Whenever I think of a major project, when I think of something like the Panama Canal or anything that was huge, that was done, that was completed, it always started with little steps, little foundational. What steps are you taking now? What steps can begin to work on this? How can I put my mind around something so vast?
So a couple of things come to mind. I talk a lot about tropical forests, and that's because I started this whole journey, this new journey, by asking the question, what's the number one solution to climate change? And what's the number one solution to the extinction crisis? When I started this work in research in 2014 and work in 2015, I was still coming out of that mindset of the environmentalist literature of the previous decade.
Sure.
And so I thought, okay, well, I know we have two crises. If we fight both of them, if there's one solution for each one, great. And I started reading up on emissions reductions from shutting down coal plants versus electric cars versus, you name it, recycling.
Right.
And I knew that area pretty well already. That's where I had been for 10 years.
Sure.
And I compared it to the emissions that were coming out of incinerating tropical forests. And that was because I had looked at global mappings for where biodiversity is located. And I didn't know, as a big environmentalist, I didn't know that half or more of all the biodiversity on our planet lives in about 5% of the total planet in the tropical forest system.
Yes.
When you look at those mappings, I brought these, by the way,
right,
if you want to see them, but it's as clear as a bell. Okay, that's where the productivity is, that's where the diversity is. But then you look at the carbon mappings of our planet, and it's the same basic outline, that the forest systems, same reason we hang out indoors with air conditioning and running water and all that stuff. A forest is sort of like that in the natural world. So protecting tropical forests is the biggest simple step that you can engage in to make a global positive difference. And I didn't know that. I was a big voice in the local green energy movement to get Austin Energy to clean up its act and do even better, be more aspirational, and so on and so forth. And the goals that we pitched in 2009 and 10 were exceeded by 2015, and we were the people that were radical in 2010. And all of these things, there are positive things happening. But when you look at, for instance, the amount of just greenhouse gas emissions. Well, let me try to take one more step back. So tropical forests then have more values, if you were to list all the reasons why you should protect and restore them, than any other solution that we can engage in.
More bang for your buck.
Exactly. It's a super multifaceted solution. It's the biggest bang for the buck. So the carbon that lives in these trees, because trees are about half carbon, and these forests are, as Ben was talking about, a 1,200-year-old tree is not uncommon in an old growth tropical forest. The Amazon, some people believe goes back to before the dinosaurs went extinct. The tropical forests in Asia definitely go back that far, and the tropical forests in Africa have to go back that far. So those ecosystems are super carbon dense, and the amount of carbon that's been released just by the Amazon fires since June in the last 2 to 4 months I believe is equal to about 10 years of Austin's complete community-wide footprint. 1.5 million people with cars and trash cans and coal plants and chip manufacturing, all of the emissions coming out of this city. We've created more of a problem for the atmosphere just in a few months of burning the Amazon than Austin can create in 10 years. And so the scale of density of these benefits, or these bang for the buck, multifaceted things, exceeds 100x often what we're accustomed to when we're trying to change our light bulbs or switch over to a cool car or whatever it is. And then the price of helping, to sort of round that out, the price of helping can be under $1 per acre. Some projects are a lot more expensive, but because you're helping to protect undeveloped lands and undeveloped economies, you can assist the nonprofit groups that are doing this work in the third world. And so these land values are pennies on the dollar. There's a project we were promoting a couple of years ago in the Congo that was 27 cents an acre. Right now we're doing one that's 76 cents an acre in the Amazon. It helps 220 indigenous communities get land rights to their ancestral lands. And it's 6.1 million acre project in Peru. It's phenomenally great. And I could go on and on and on about all the things, but that's one thing you can do. The other thing, the quick answer is I'm trying to figure out how to say this in a better way, but biospheric thinking, that you really start to engage in this recognition that you're surrounded by living things.
Yes.
And when you look at anything in front of you, whether it's your iPhone or your shoes, it's because of the living things on this planet that preceded us that made all this possible. And there was no life on land 600 million years ago. It's all in motion, and we are the result of a long story. We've accidentally, without knowing it, sort of lost touch with that story and have destroyed the majority of that system in the last few decades as population has grown. But anyway, biospheric thinking, that you can make a huge difference by trying to enrich the soil in your backyard with compost, trying to make sure that you don't waste things in the same way that you've done before. You think more about the plastic that's going into the ocean. You try to eliminate these things that are affecting other organisms, other living things, whether it's a microbe or a dolphin or a tree.
Right.
All of it is critical to our future.
And so when we're thinking about the process of changing our perspective and change it, that's the thing that excites me about that. So are you looking at it because you did this from the entrepreneurial level, and now you're doing it through the nonprofit level and through the educational level? Tell me your Chris Searles' route.
Well, I believe that we are, as I've said, it's the 12th hour. It's not the 11th hour now. Mm-hmm. We're on the other side of the bad news. We have to decide what we want the future to be like.
Right.
And culture change, I think, is the most important element. And the other thing, if we get a chance to talk more at length, I want to hear more thoughts from you about this. But we really have to, as grassroots-ish relatively articulate people that can figure out relatively complicated things, just like a lot of other better resourced people out
Yes.
there. We have to call on the world's wealthiest people now
Yes.
to change. That's really the only way I think that we can expect for things to shift at the scale that's required, and it has to happen real fast. It's maybe not the most realistic thing to ask of the world today.
I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is. I mean, it may be unrealistic, but I'm idealistic and I'm an optimist. And I really think if we really got down and I was able to talk with and were able to continue to go, what is enough?
Right.
Everything in my life. I mean, are you kidding me? I live like a freaking king.
Yeah.
I live in a palace. It's 3 bedrooms. It's air conditioned. I'm so wealthy, I piss into potable water.
And my food is cold all day.
And my food is cold all day, and I have all that. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, kings.
Yeah.
And here I am, and just in a rental home, and this, but yet
I'm totally with
beautiful.
you.
It is an extraordinary. And what is enough, Dennis?
Yeah.
What would enough be? Would if I had 3 more zeros on the other side of the decimal when it moved? Would that be enough? Would it do? And when we begin getting into hundreds of millions and billions of dollars of personal wealth, and that, where does it ever? It's a subject I want to explore.
Yeah, I mean, I assume if you're Jeff Bezos, the idea of having more than anyone else is ultimately the most appealing thing in the world, and he's just continuing to climb as high as he can. You know, I think most of us can't ever access that feeling, so we just don't know what that's like. You know, same with anybody that's up there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I asked that.
So I have sympathy or empathy for like not understanding what it's like to be in that seat, that driver's seat, where you're like, well, listen, you know, I blink and everyone takes notice, you know.
Yeah. I can't imagine. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, but you had some of that when you were a musician, and you had the adoration and the people around you, and you had some of that. Was that a difficult transition to move through?
To become someone that no one admired.
Yeah, from that into and now we get to okay, I get to be what, an environmentalist, conservationist. Okay, what?
Yeah. A semi-academic revolutionary.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, so will Ben Livingston's show be tied to this one? If I talk about him, is that okay?
Yeah, talk about
that would be
Ben.
perfect.
Absolutely.
Let's see. He was. Oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. He was talking about. Oh, when he sang that final song.
Yeah.
Ben Livingston, when he sang that final song, I mean, it transformed everything, right?
Yeah.
In the control room in there, and in here for you guys, and then Ben, and when it finished,
right
you
here.
could see. Yeah.
Yes.
And I know that feeling too as a performer. Like when you do something that's magical and it goes well, suddenly you're in a different state. But for him to sing when he sang deeper, you know, in that falsetto. I mean, that is an opening of your soul, your heart.
Yeah.
That you don't get in most normal conversation. With you, I think, especially after seeing that, I'm going to try a little harder to be that way.
Good.
But with most people, every day, you know, music really liberates that connection to how you feel, how you really feel. And if you can make that a triumphant feeling or a deep, committed feeling for a person, that's where that adoration, I guess, comes from. People go to you because they really depend on that. Man, this person's amazing, you know?
Yeah.
What's funny is as a musician, when you do it all the time, and, you know, day after day on the road, and you have to play the same songs and things like that, sometimes, you know, you're trying to just make sure you don't mess up. You're not feeling it the same way that the audience is, of course.
Right.
And it's a funny dynamic for me. So I sort of prefer to be in a little more of a risky space.
Yeah.
Where I don't know what the heck I'm doing, you know, most of the time, and I'm trying to communicate in new ways about what I consider to be new ideas. With the idea that what we were talking about the other day, we can progress up another stair step or two.
Exactly.
As a worldview, or in our worldview as a species, and we can do it quickly. I think it's going to take all kinds of things to do that, but But anyway, I think
But if you had to live,
it doesn't feel bad.
If we had to live at a transformational moment when it was all hands on deck, okay, people, as a species, as a planet, are we going to survive? Are we not? Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really the message we need to be talking about, and it's no fun to sort of throw that out there, and it's also so big and unwieldy. It's like, you know, how do you say that convincingly? Where's Martin Luther King Jr. when we need him? You know, we need somebody who can really, really orate around these ideas right now.
This is one thing I'm interested in right now, especially in the political spectrum, and trying to get the consciousness around this, is that how do we say it in an encapsulated way that can move people? Because these are some really, this entire ecosystem is a marvelous, interconnected. I mean, when you look at the body, I mean, what Ben Livingston was talking about, and with the work that he's going through in the healing of muscular dystrophy and all that he's working on, and the physical, what a body does is extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what this planet is an extraordinary complex, and it can't be dealt with it is happening, it isn't happening.
Right.
We're talking about some very complex issues that have to be addressed on multiple fronts. Now, can we digest it into something that can move people?
Yeah. I don't know that there's one way, you know?
No.
I think the word biointegrity is a lucky break for me.
I know. How did that come about?
It came about just through trying to find a good domain name for the project.
Nice.
So the turning point in that project was I had done a bunch of research. You know, I had 10 years of background in consumer products and advocacy and events and education on green lifestyle, basically, and making consumerism better for the planet. The goal was to make it actually beneficial.
Right.
And so we had to stop doing certain things like burning coal and start doing things like composting, and, you know, trying to get all these things to be cool and energizing and easy to facilitate and all that was what I was doing. I didn't know much about ecosystems, and when I did this research to see, you know, so where's the biggest carbon bang for the buck on the planet?
Yep.
You know, it's just so clear. It's so easy to see on a map, which is one of the ways I think we accomplish what you're talking about, is the visuals, the global visuals are stark. The contrast is stark in terms of how things are so super concentrated in the tropics.
Yeah.
Like about 75% of global biological productivity is in the tropics. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. Most people don't know that, but you can see it on NASA's mapping. You can see it in the stills. You can see it in the animations of a year or 20 years of satellite data. But so what I learned was, okay, so protecting the most biodiverse ecosystems, the tropical forests, protecting the most life is the biggest solution to climate change. Wow, that's cool. So I'm looking for a domain name that says something about protecting life as a solution, as a step forward, and that's how I ended up with Biointegrity.
Wonderful. So what are you doing with it, and where are you going? What kinds of things are on your agenda as far as you can see? Now, again, of course, it's going to continue to evolve in this, but just to give me some perspective.
I have a bunch of different projects I'm sort of managing in, a little bit here and a little bit there. Mm-hmm. So in the spring, I did a thing called Strings in the Park. That's a concert series. The idea there is just to, this is such a meaty type of conversation. Yeah. And before the Amazon fires, you couldn't really talk about sort of biological issues in climate conversation wasn't even as easy to have as it is 3 months later.
Right.
So the idea of Strings in the Park is that we're trying to do an event that's just open to anyone. It's not a political event, of course. And that gives me a chance. I bring a great artist out and put strings with this great artist's songs and do a concert in the park. And people come out to enjoy their time in the park. So first they engage in nature, just enjoying themselves outdoors, which is rare. Not so much in Austin, but in general, people don't do that.
Exactly.
And then I get to introduce the artist. So in my 2-minute intro, I take about 30 seconds and say, we're doing globally strategic environmentalism. And with that, we've already been able to offset, by protecting the most important ecosystems on the planet, we've been able to offset Austin's community-wide carbon footprint for more than 5 years. And we've done this with less than $500,000 in fundraising by directing it strategically to the most globally important places. Then I've also got a project called allcreation.org as I call, these are part of the biointegrity umbrella.
Yeah.
All creation is a tribute and also a real heartfelt effort. My father was a minister in Austin for 25 years and a teacher for 20 years after that and a minister for 10 or 20 years before that. You know,
Wow.
career, good guy, took care of a lot of people and did it because of his Christian values, but he was also as Buddhist as he was Christian. It's just he hailed from a generation where Buddhism wasn't really, they didn't really know what that was. You know, that was just weird. It was from another part of the world. But he was this very open, very meditative, very complete person. And when I first learned about, you know, the green stuff we talked about when I was up in New York, sort of on the journey to figure out where I was going to go after music, I discovered all these great ideas about how to fix the underlying major problems for human beings, you know, the degradation of our life support system. Mm-hmm. And I thought, great, well, I'll go back to the Sunday school classes that, you know, I was in when I was a kid and talk to all these people in the church that raised me.
Sure.
And they'll love this because this is what they taught me to do, you know,
Yeah.
take care of the creation basically. And I went back and did that, and it didn't have much of an effect like I thought it would. And
What
that
do you think was going on? Why didn't
What's
it?
still
Why
going
didn't
on?
it resonate?
One reason is religious, you know, Christian folks in general are oriented towards saving souls, not saving the planet, you know.
Right.
And then also the politicization of anything environmental and the fact that a lot of the Christian world tends to be on a more conservative side of politics.
But when I look at the word conservative,
Yeah.
it seems like conserve is in there. I mean, it's
I know.
right there. You don't have to go far to find the word.
Yeah.
The Teddy Roosevelt. I'm trying to think of what his
He invented
perspective
conservation.
and why this can't be part of the conversation, and to have that. I mean, I like my capitalism. I'm a capitalist.
Yeah.
I like my capitalism with some feathers.
Yeah.
You know, I want to make sure that there is some direction in that.
Well, that's
and
where
that
I'm
we
trying to
can
go,
have that.
yeah.
And that's where we can do, because if we can direct the funding to where it's most useful
Essential.
and essential, now we're doing something we can do. It just absolutely blows me away what you're doing.
Yeah, and well, so thank you. All creation is, you know, a tribute to my family, and it's a project to help people of faith and spiritual practice, because I go to all the different places, Jewish, Buddhist, etc. Help them find connections just to biodiversity, to the other living creatures. There's this incredible blindness that we have as I now term us as being inside the Death Star. You know, we are
Yeah.
members of the Empire.
Yes.
And so we're trying to turn that thing around right now from the inside. A few of us are.
Yes.
And the majority of people in our empire here are really not aware of the fact that we're an empire or that we are completely out of touch with
No.
our life support system and that kind of thing. So the extinction crisis, the loss of biodiversity, that should be a penultimate issue for people of faith and spiritual practice.
No question. No question.
And yet, it's not. So we're
Yeah.
trying to, through this All Creation Project, help people make those connections.
I love that, and I love the fact that you're doing that, because I have a deep faith in the human being. I believe that we are not by nature, this idea of that we are, of however it is, or how I learned what original sin was supposed to be, that we were in some way that I just don't buy it.
Yeah.
I look into I believe that the human being has a basic kindness. It's a basic that we get trained out of we get trained out of a lot of
traumatized
things,
out,
and
or-
we're traumatized
yeah.
out of who we actually are. And so it's our opportunity now to get past that and to go through that, to be able to operate and communicate at a higher level.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
And that's what I'm hoping, and that's what I think that you're getting, what I think that we can do, because once people learn, once people experience, once people feel it, then there will be that tipping point. We were talking about that
Right.
in our pre-interview, that we don't know when the tipping point is going to be, or when enough people will suddenly go, oh, and then the funding will just be moving and the streams will be moving in order to be able to protect it. The bypass
Yeah.
will have happened.
Yeah, to rebuild the vital organs of the planet and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're basically Michael DeBakey, and you're sitting there doing the trend. You're doing.
I don't know who that is.
He was the first one of the heart transplant
Okay.
people. So that's not a good analogy, but in that sense, because we're not going to be transplanting, but we can do the. But I like the idea of bypassing and of getting funding, of rerouting funding, so that it begins to flow to these areas.
Yeah. Well, at the risk of really embarrassing myself because I haven't thought this one through yet, but
Yeah.
you asked where things are going, and
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure.
I've had a paper kicking around in my head for a good while that is called The Economy of Environmental Stewardship. And you were talking about, you're all for capitalism, but, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Or
basic
capitalism and.
Yeah, capitalism and the basic one of the premises of this paper is capitalism has failed in that it's eating its own tail. It's destroying its own
Absolutely.
future.
Absolutely.
It doesn't incorporate stewardship of its life support system into the system, right?
Exactly.
And so it's just going to go headlong until it hits the wall and we have nothing to build from.
Yep.
And the idea with the economy of environmental stewardship is that we look at where Earth's ecosystems or our life support systems are most productive and we stop the destruction of those places and start the restoration and reconnectivity of those places immediately and make that a fundamental priority for globalization. Whether you're pro-capitalism, pro-globalization or not, it doesn't really matter because it's way bigger than any of us are now.
It is.
And so it's going to continue until, further notice. But it really doesn't have much time left if the organism that sustains it is just constantly extracted from and poisoned, which is what we've been doing for 200 years. We have an economy of extraction,
Yes.
not an economy of extraction and then replenishment. So we now have to rapidly restore, rapidly replenish, and stop the destruction of the last remaining old-growth ecosystems as fast as we can.
Yep.
And again, in this context of September 9th, 2019, with the fires in the Amazon, the new president in Brazil, the crazy politics we have where it's starting to feel like a crime syndicate could take over globally in the next
Sure.
10 years. It's all this stuff sounds like, well, good luck to you a little bit. But the reality is we have kind of those two choices.
Yep.
We've got there is no organism that can sustain constant extraction, right?
No.
And that's what we've been doing. So we have to wake up to that, and we have to, I think, again, call on the wealthiest people and corporations to own that issue, make this their moment, to make it their legacy, that they're the ones that saved life. As far as we know,
When
there
they
isn't
write
another
back on
planet.
it, this is when they write about it. This is when they will say, this is when they stepped up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is when we stepped up.
It was
And
between
you
2020 and 2030 that we turned it around.
Yeah.
And,
You take the 500,000 on the right, I'll take the 500,000 on the left, and we'll get after it. And that's this gives me hope, because it gives me an opportunity to say we are doing this. We're taking our shot.
Yeah.
That in the Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote in Hamilton, and when he I'm not going to throw away my shot.
Right.
I'm not going to throw away my shot. And
Yeah.
this is our shot. This is our opportunity to be able to be. This is our D-Day moment.
right.
This is our moment that we're going to get a chance to be able to do something for the species for when it happened, and that's the opportunity.
Did you see that piece on the Apple News feed this morning on,
No.
I think it was Vice or Gizmodo, that said something like, ban all old rich white men from talking about climate change?
Yes.
Do you see that?
No, but I love it. I love
Well, so it was a response to, I think the guy's name is Jonathan Franzen, who wrote a piece on Sunday that said, basically, we might as well give up. We've had 30 years to stop climate change. We're not going to do it. And so this younger person, I assume millennial, by the way he wrote about it, wrote in and said, basically, you need to sit down and shut up, man. I have courage. You can go live off of your wealth,
Right.
and eat kale from the farmer's market and think that you're doing something and wait for the storm. My generation we are going to roll up our sleeves no matter what. We're courageous. We're moving forward on this. And that, to me, was what you're saying, just like gave me this energy and, chills. And that's, an interesting thing about generationally what's happening is the younger folks seem to have way more fortitude than the last few generations.
Yes.
And God help us, if they don't. Everything looks easier when you're
That's
young,
right?
But I really do think there's a ton of intellectual know-how and community spirit in the younger generations that are coming up right now. And it's people like you and I that can hopefully, we're sort of the we sort of pave some of that road because we're these kinder, gentler, more community-oriented people.
Well,
and
I
here
think
they
that's
come
so.
ready to pitch in,
I think that's so. But if we were evolving as a species, and we were going through the process, just like the bonobos and the chimps went through to the hominids. When that happened, whatever imperative that was, it had to be something. There had to be in the chimp and bonobo communities. They had to know something was going on. There had to be some. Well, now, what if that were happening? And what if these kids? We're talking about when I go to the grocery store, I go around and I look in the eyes of these kids, there is something going on in there.
Yep.
I know I may be projecting
They're
on
proud to
something,
be gay.
but
They're proud to be trans. It's like stuff that you couldn't talk about 20 years ago is now, that's who I am.
I know.
It's like really
and
cool.
that makes such difference because if I'm spending so much time covering up who I am, then.
Will you do a zing? Zing.
Zing. I don't know what a zing is.
Well, just a little plug for yourself.
Oh, for biointegrity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I need to look at a camera or something?
Look at him.
Yeah.
Ask him.
So.
One more time.
All right. So.
What can we do?
All right. So and
Tell us.
one of the things that we're going to do, we're going to make sure.
Oh, he just took his mic off.
No, that's okay. I can reconnect in just a second because this is what we're having.
I was afraid I wouldn't have anything to say.
You had a little bit to say, and I want to hear more, but we don't have time.
Yeah,
But I hope you come back.
I would love to come back.
I would love
I'm a
to.
Dennis fan for life.
Cool.
Okay, Chris. What I need to know is that how. One of the things we're going to put on the website is different ways that we can connect. But I want to know what are the ways that we can connect with Biointegrity and the different things that are underneath your umbrella.
The Biointegrity website is biointegrity.net. And if you go to biointegrity.net/solutions, that's where I am recommending the biggest bang for the buck of the biggest bang for the buck solutions. So I mentioned the project on the Amazon for 76 cents. That's there. That's supporting a group called Sedia in Peru. And yeah, there's the Biointegrity website. There's a Facebook page that's constantly pushing solutions. And there'll be more media coming in the future.
Yeah. How's that?
Yes, and one more. Ask him, is there any hope?
Yes.
Do you have hope? Do you have any hope?
Yeah.
Are we going to survive? However you want to put it.
One of the things that that we hear in the doomsday scenarios is that it's all over, that we've already crossed the threshold, we've gone and we might as well, we're on the lifeboat, and basically now we just need to get off. I don't feel that way, but I need to hear it from much more of a science perspective. Do you have where is your hope, and where's your hope grounded?
My hope is in the evidence that comes from 4 billion years of life on this planet, and that there is no question that the planet will resurge with life as soon as humanity stops destroying it. And so stopping the destruction is the fastest way to address climate change at the greatest scale with the greatest number of benefits. From that point forward, we can rebuild and reintegrate. Now there are people everywhere. 50 years ago, there were less than 4 billion people on Earth. Now there's nearly 8 billion people on Earth. So we have to regreen our cities. We have to make use of our organic waste products to strengthen our soils, to strengthen the resilience of ecosystems to deal with extreme weather. But there's a very clear line that is just about rebuilding the biosphere, restoring the integrity of the biosphere as fast as we can, everywhere we possibly can, but starting where it's most important in the tropics. That'll give us, there's no reason that the future can't be brighter based on this idea of biospheric restoration. Regardless of how hot the planet gets, vegetation and life in general is incredibly resilient and adaptive given proper resources. And what we're doing right now is just taking resources out. But we can rebuild those resources, and in the tropics in particular, forests can grow back to closed canopy in 3 years in some cases, right? So the rate of restoration, once it's left to rewild on its own, can be exponential. And that's something that we need to start counting on and investing in as fast as we can, and that's how we build a brighter future.
God damn.
Was that too long?
That was just so magnificent. That is just so magnificent. That is, when you watch this, and when you watch that particular piece, that